Welcome to episode 17 of the Universe Extended Podcast. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Andor, episode 11, which is the second to last episode in the Andor series. I'm very excited by this and ready to talk a little bit about Andor. Joining me on mic tonight is my good friend, Mr. JJ, the lover of Andor, wisher of Luthen, and creator of crazy X-Wing Luthen ships that are going to die right away and never be taken.
Yes.
How are you tonight, sir?
Excited, man. It's hard to believe that this week coming up will be the last episode of the season. Just excited to see how they're going to close this out with so much already they've done in the series right now. It's been a great ride, and I can't wait to see what the finale is going to be.
Yeah. Side note, I am working on a Universe Extended intro that we can start playing next series that we have, which will hopefully be Bad Batch in January. Hopefully.
Yes.
Because, and I'm very excited for Bad Batch, especially now. Now I'm even more excited for Bad Batch than what I was before because of the time period thing. So tonight we're going to be talking about episode 11 of Andor, because, which I thought was very interesting. I did not feel that it was as much of a low episode, like kind of a downtrodden episode as a lot of people are. I felt it was very action packed, and I felt like it was building that razor blade edge of jumping into what we're gonna get in episode 12. My prediction is episode 12 is gonna be over an hour. That's my prediction, is that we're gonna get 55 minutes to 65 minutes of actual content.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I'm actually hopeful for more like an hour and a half. But no, I think 57, 59 minutes is probably the good ballpark for how long the finale should be. But diving into this episode, we're seeing the aftermath of the escape, the prison escape, and seeing Andor with Melchi being able to escape from the prison and on the run for the Empire. We know that they have no idea if any of the other prisoners have made it, and there's a scene where they're basically hanging on for their lives on the side of a cliff while a TIE Reaper is flying around checking for, or at least scouting for prisoners and stuff. It was great to see the TIE Reaper around there. However, it always feels weird to me when I don't see it escorted by a striker.
Yeah,
but that's the X-Wing player in me, right? Wanting to see more and more ships. One of the great little Easter egg, I guess it's kind of an Easter egg, is seeing them encounter a quad jumper. And it is basically from, I guess, these hunters that are out there, and they basically use that as their transport ship while they're hunting for whatever they're hunting for, and they get caught. And they specifically mentioned that the quad jumper is an old ship, which makes me think that we'll might be able to see the quad jumper actually appear early on, maybe during the Clone Wars era, if they're calling it an old ship.
Yeah. I guess I never really thought of when that ship would normally appear, right? I guess I never thought about that, but I think you're right. All I can say is I didn't get to watch it Wednesday at noon. Usually I take my lunch hour and I watch it. I usually have grilled cheese and tomato soup because it's super easy. It's very quick to make. I can do a few dishes and then hop right into the episode. This week I had to go on site for work, and so JJ's like, "Oh my god, this is a great show." I said, shut up. I didn't get to watch it yet. Shut the fuck up. And he's like, "Oh, it's just payback for all those times you bitched at me about not being able to watch it on your lunch hour." And it's like, yeah. But I did. I guess I could have watched it on my phone, if I wanted to, but I did anyway. So when the quad jumper came up, I was like, "Holy shit, a quad jumper! We're getting quad jumpers back at X-Wing. It's happening, baby."
Yes.
I was so excited. I was like, I really want that quad jumper back. And
Yeah. I mean, think
we
about it.
could get
We seen it in the
Unkar
movie.
Plutt back.
For a hot second, I thought that one of them was actually going to be like the pilots that was gonna like capture like Andor. I was like on the lookout. I'm like, oh my god, are we gonna see Uncard like out there or whatever? But no, you're right. I mean, we've seen it out in the movies, and now we've seen it in a show. So it definitely stands to reason that this should be a ship that should come out in next wing, a reprint now introduced into 2.0. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm excited because I only own one. I own
yeah.
one. So like for me, I can get two more of those and probably be stupid to get two, but I could get at least one more of them, and I would be I don't know, I would be super happy to have that, especially if they redesign that dial. Oh man, give me a little bit different of a dial and help me have some different pilot abilities. Like now they open, the door is just open, and the best is when it starts to lift off, right?
It's starting to like pop and shake like an
Yes.
old an old Chevy that has the backfire out the tailpipe. Like
Yeah.
that was the funniest
Yeah.
thing. I loved it.
Yep. I was like, oh, that ship's gonna crash, and this is like the irony would be okay, and this would have been hilarious. This is Tanner thinking of an episode. If it crashed, and then all of a sudden Cassian woke up and was on the back of that ship, that would have been hilarious. That would have been like a big middle finger to like all of us saying, "Hey, he's not really dead," but because we'd be like, "What the heck? Why? Why in God's great? Why? Oh my God! Why is it crashing?" Um, but the scene itself was very tense, right? Because they talk about in the scene that are they really the only two left, right? Are they the only two people left from that escape? And Cassian's like, stop worrying about this shit. Stop worrying. We need to get off. Like, you have to focus. And I really wish he would be like, hey, remember that whole scenario where we kind of set up us being in prison forever? Um,
Mhm.
that was me that caused that. Like, that's me, just so you know. So I've been through this before, you know, like I'm used to this type of shit. Um, and the one thing I feel we have been a little bit robbed of is big backstory for Cassian, right? Like we
Yeah.
have a little bit of taste of Cassian's backstory, but we don't have this big gulp of like what Cassian really was like, because a lot of the skills he has or that he's displaying are not skills you intuitively have or have on the fly. That's not how that works.
Mhm.
Um, so Cassian has to have some skill sets that we don't know about. But the best is they get captured, the goo web thing falls on them. They basically make you feel like they're going to murder them because they don't care. They just want the bounty. And then all of a sudden they're like, we're just kidding. We hate the Empire too. Come on, baby, get in. Where do you want to go? And we don't even care. We're not even going to take money for it. That's how crazy this is. Like, and that's where there's a little bit of belief suspension, in my opinion, right there. Cause it's like, in most of Star Wars, you don't do shit for free.
Mhm.
And maybe they're setting up this species as like a rebel insurgent type species that kind of helps them. And you know who they remind me of? And it was like this is a Star Wars Destiny thing, but there was like these little minor looking Nara Shada people, and they just
Yeah.
look like them. They were
Yeah.
from Destiny. I don't know if they're from Star Wars lore other than that, but they were like in Destiny. And I just like, as soon as I saw them, I was like, I texted my son. I was like, hey, remember when we played Destiny and these cards that came out that sucked? I think they just appeared in Andor.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And then fast forwarding from there, the we have Luthien now armed with the information that that the Empire is going to essentially set the trap for Kriega. He's now on his way over to Saul's rebels and informing them of what's going on. And Saul originally wants to join in this raid, and Luthien persuades him not to go into it, which causes Saul to get very apprehensive and basically questioning Luthien's loyalty for it. I thought the scene was very, very good because normally, I mean, Saul is very paranoid, right, about everything that's going on. And I think this actually feeds in more into his paranoia, like going forward, because he feels like he's ISB, which obviously he's not. He actually got information from a ISB agent. Um, but I like that interaction because the way he he persuades Saw from going all in into this attack, despite all the everything that's going on, and still maintaining that level of trust with Saw. I mean, it was pretty ballsy him taking the blaster and putting it to his neck just so he can listen. And I guess that's the only way you can really like get people to like pay attention. Sometimes is you got to threaten their life in order for them to listen to you. But that dynamic between Luthien and Saw, I mean, I just found that really really great.
Well, I agree, and I think the idea there, right? And we're going to talk about something in a second. What Luthien has that he had to turn over the two tubes. We're going to talk about that because I think that's very interesting, and it's I think if we look at how Disney does things, it's alluding to something we're going to learn next season. But um, I think one of the big things here, right, is when you talk about the dialogue and him putting the gun to his neck, is Luthen's essentially at a breaking point, and Luthen is questioning his decision. He tells Saw, "You make the decision. You make the decision." Saw's like, "Bro, what the hell, man? Like, I I didn't come here. I do my own thing. Like, why do I got to make your decisions?" And I think a lot of that kind of reflects back into if we understand how the rebel dynamic was built, right? Like we start with Leia getting this transmission and blah blah blah, and then Alderaan blowing up, and like it's everybody's all in on this empire. People weren't like that, right? And if you think about it, and again, I don't want to get too political, but this is part of me is just a political person, right? When we talk about things, we talk about where people feel and when they want to create and do action, right? This is one of those times, like in our society, like how many times can somebody say something racist before you say you don't belong in political position anymore, right? Like how many times are we going to accept this? Like just get the fuck out. And here we have a very similar dynamic where these two are like, we got to murder people that are on our side for the greater good. Are we really good? Are we good people? Or are we demonstrably horrible individuals for this? And I think that dynamic right there, that's the human, and this is why I like Andor. That's the human condition. Like when we talk about Jedi and this whole moral code bullshit, the Jedi moral code gets so fuddily, gets so muddled. This is like taking Jedi code and applying it to real life. If there was enough Jedi alive, maybe this would be a thing. But this is where the Jedi Council fails. And again, this is where I identify with Saw and with Luthen, right? Is because I don't know, like, yes, I'm a business person, but like Luthen is actually having like, and we heard last episode, what did Luthen say? Basically, I have nothing. This is me. I get no future. I'm never going to see the end of this, which I don't like that foreshadowing, but that's what he's foreshadowing is I'm going all in because this is so much more important than me. But where he misses is, does he get to make that decision for somebody else? And that's what this is why I say this is not like a soft like setup episode. This episode is dealing with a heavy topic, because when we talk about war, right, you have to send people in, and this happened I think more often before than now because of the technology piece, but before you had to make executive decisions. Is it okay to sacrifice a few for the greater good? Is it really okay? And I think the moral dilemma of this episode, and again, I like the Prison Break episode, don't get me wrong, that was pretty amazing, but the moral dilemma of this episode to me feels so much more deep, and whether they meant to or not, I don't know, but it feels so deep because they're challenging everything you're taught, and you have to now create and make a decision on how the rebellion's going to go. Now, JJ, I'm going to ask you a question because we still don't know, because technically Krieger has not been sacrificed yet. technically speaking, there could still be a change that comes that stops somebody could have a change of heart, which again is a prediction of mine that's going to happen. I believe it's going to happen. But with that, do you feel that this is a pivotal point, kind of like when Cassian, spoiler alert, but when Cassian gives up his life at the end of Rogue One, for him and Jin give their lives up, right, for the rebellion to make sure those transmissions of the Death Star get out. Do you feel this Krieger thing is a pivotal point in rebellion history?
Yeah, I think so. I think that this particular plot line is setting up for both Cassian entering into a larger rebellion, and also Mon Mothma becoming the leader of the rebellion as well. I think that these incidents are setting up those particular points, so that way the rebellion can be born. I think that this is probably the most direct and biggest instance of an organized rebellion that we've seen prior to the actual rebellion, being in full force during the time of Rogue One. So I absolutely think that this directly leads to Mothma's decision to openly go out against the Empire, and gathering all the pockets of resistance to form an organized rebellion. Um, I believe that Luthien will ultimately give up his life for that, because he sees there's no other way, according to the equation that he wrote, that there's no other way for this. So I absolutely think that this is a pivotal part for the rebellion.
Yeah, and I don't know. So like, and we're talking that's like what 6-7 minutes of dialogue. Like that to me,
Mm-hmm.
that's how impactful this is. Um,
Yeah.
So all right, so we're gonna move past that because I could spend an hour on that philosophy. Like we could actually talk about that. Like we could have a political philosophical podcast if you wanted sometime. Like that shit keeps me up at night. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
But we get to move on, right? We get to move on to talking. We get to see Mon Mothma now, right?
Yeah. She does the correct thing and including her cousin into this, because previously, from what we've seen so far with Mothma's interaction with her friend from Alderaan that's helping her funnel things, and from her previous conversation with the banker, she's kind of cornering herself in a position where she's going to be in a bad spot. Her family is going to be compromised, her own position, and possibly any contacts around her. They're going to be like found out, and she's going to end up having a lot of people killed because of her. Um, you can easily see her quiet desperation to find a solution, and her cousin coming to her, providing her that outlet for her to kind of talk things out of what's going on and help try to formulate a plan of how they can get out of this, is a nice side to it. A nice development for Mothma, seeing her try to find a way out of the hole that she's currently finding herself in. I did like that bit here because I feel like pretty soon, at least not in this season, but next season, we're going to see the violent exit that she's going to have to make, to now lead the rebellion. Like right before she ends up, like I think that what we'll see in this series is her getting into that counselorship and running away from the Empire at the last second, so that way she can unite the rebellion. I think we're going to get to that point. I'm very excited to see that part happen.
Yeah, and if you think about it, they've set it up perfectly with her daughter, right?
Yeah.
Like she wants to be part of the old ways. Mon Mothma's like, no, no, no. And then all of a sudden we see she's doing the old ways, and Mon
Yep.
Mothma's going to make the trade, in my opinion, to keep her daughter safe. Whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, she's going to make the trade. She's going to get the family funds. She's going to make a run. And we're going to see like the closing credits is literally going to be the opening of New Hope, in my opinion. Like we're gonna see like that text start to scroll a long time ago in a future far, far, far away. We're gonna see it, and like that's gonna be like to me that would be the best. Even though I know it's skipping, you're skipping things, but whatever. Like to me, that would be like the ultimate end scene because it's like yes, we have a decisive rebellion, and it, oh my god, and this opens up so many things, and this is where I talk like I like Game of Thrones, right? And we're gonna ignore the last 2 seasons. um because I don't want to talk about it because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
disagree with a lot of people. I liked them. I felt they were rushed, but we don't have a
Yes,
book to base it off of.
exactly.
But I do really still like them, but not as much as some of the other episodes. And Game of Thrones has this intrigue and this integral piece, right? Excuse me, of everything. This has an integral piece of everything, right? Kind of built in. This has, in my opinion, Andor has set up a way to bring in how does Palpatine feel? How does Vader feel about some of these things? Right? There is a whole piece where we can like talk about all sorts of crazy things because Palpatine is not a dumb person, right? There is manipulation, there is all these Game of Thrones-esque type things going on in Star Wars that we've not seen to the level we see in Game of Thrones. Like, to be perfectly frank, I could see Andor being a 4-season show. No more than 4 though. Three tops. The 3 to 4 tops, right? And I don't know. I just feel there is so much more to that. But I think you're right. Again, we're gonna go back to
Yeah,
let's. I'm digressing into what I hope for. And we're gonna go back to the show, right? Because so we saw
yeah.
Mon Mothma. We see her basically, essentially set up giving her daughter away, leaving for the rebellion, and then we kind of come back to Luthien. And where's Luthien at, JJ?
So he's heading out of the atmosphere from the planet where he met Saw, and it's interesting, right? Because we get the initial conversation that he's having with his agent um, back at his shop, at his rarities shop, and they're talking about trying to acquire peace. And it's funny how he transitions from a like an operative, right, the mastermind, to now a rarities collector, and talking about the necessity of having that part in his collection for it. And then right in the middle of that conversation that he has, all of a sudden the conversation just drops. They can't talk to each other, they can't see each other. And that moment happened, I'm like, oh man, there is a capital class ship that just jammed the communications. And we get that slow, like, outside view of the Fondor, a hull ship hovering above the planet in orbit. And now we have this big array coming out of the screen, entering it. When that first came in, I literally thought it was going to be a modified Gazanti, like the one that we saw in Rebels that helped track Chopper down, just based on the array. But it was a weird ship that we haven't seen before. It was a modified Arrestor class ship, which is actually, if I'm not mistaken, a modified version of the support frigate that we see in Clone Wars. It had a similar a similar like design, right? The whole design. It just had those modifications with the
With
giant
the tractor
tractor bay
beams, yeah.
array in the front, and then other satellites to help jam communications and monitor communications above the planet. Um, it was really interesting because we haven't really seen that ship too much other than in the animated series for Clone Wars. So it was really interesting to see that ship comes in, and then Luthien once again steals the show with one of the best like performances that we've seen so far for a space battle in all these Disney series so far. With Luthien trying to essentially try to talk his way out of this, and the commander of that ship really having a suspicion on whether or not he's related to, or at least in league with Saw and the partisans, because he basically stops his ship, saying that there's been partisan activity and they are going to inspect his ship. Um, that's that part there, just when that started happening and he's starting to set up his countermeasures and basically fake his ID, for the registry for a ship for Alderaan, which makes me think. I wonder if that decision to make it seem that it's an Alderaanian ship, if that causes the Empire to target Alderaan for rebellion later on.
No, it doesn't. It does. To me, it's him throwing a signal to say it's him slipping up and giving a signal that there is Alderaan is a safe space for dissensive opinions. That's how I see it. I don't think that's why they chose it. Um, I think we're gonna see some bullshit where Vader somehow like it's gonna come down to the fact that we're gonna get we're gonna get Leia's father to show back up. We know it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And
Bail, yeah.
yep. And what's gonna happen is when Bail is somehow we're gonna have Mon Mothma leave and Bail's gonna because we know Bail has a huge role and has because of all of the cartoons. Like he shows up and he shows up in the books like you wouldn't believe. Ahsoka book. And
and Tales of the Jedi.
And Tales of the Jedi, but Ahsoka book first. Which is a really good book. If you've never read that book, you should 100% read that book. I'm sorry, like that is I have a bigger respect for Ahsoka than I ever thought I would have because of that book. And that's all credit to my son. My son gets all the credit for that. So anyway, we haven't even talked about Tales of the Jedi. You're distracting me, JJ.
That'll be after Andor. Okay, we'll get to that after.
All right.
Yeah.
No, it's different than the cartoon. It's different than
they expand
Tales
more.
of the. No, yeah. They ruin Tales of the Jedi. Ruin that book. Anyway, you're stop because we could literally spend the next hour. We could talk Tales of the Jedi. We could do that because I really enjoyed that. But I have to get back to Andor. Yes, I have to do this.
Do it.
So we see Andor creating this illusion, trying to escape.
Oh, Luthian.
Yeah. What did I say? Illusion?
You said Andor.
Andor trying to escape. All right. Luthen trying to escape, and he does some weird, crazy thing where I swear to God he shoots missiles out of his butt. JJ thinks he just drops him like a rig cargo chute. I think he shoots missiles out of his ass.
I absolutely think that it's like a rig cargo chute. The reason being, right, is that he set this up, right? So the ship, the Fondor Horrocraft is trapped on a passive lock, right? And then after non-complying, they intensify the tractor beam, right, to level 2. The integrated Fondor brain is tracking the strength of the tractor beam, and then he tells them to intentionally fire off the left engine, causing the ship to try to escape. He waits at that point for the Empire to respond by fully increasing the tractor beam, pulling the ship down, the entirety of the ship closer to the capital ship. And it's at that point that he releases the countermeasures. So if your tractor beam is strong enough to pull it towards the capital ship, it stands that if you launch debris, that the smaller mass would be attracted to the array first, especially since it has no propellant to get away. So by dropping that rig cargo chute, they've essentially disabled that tractor array, and then everything else happens, and we get one of the best space scenes that we've seen out of all these series so far, with the Arrestor class cruiser launching a squadron of TIE fighters and a TIE bomber to try to go capture his ship. And we get to see for the first time the guns that this ship has. It reveals a turret that is able to one-shot a TIE bomber as it approaches, and then it makes a passive loop in front of the bridge. And then we see the foils change into a new configuration, and it releases what looks like the equivalent of like a Sith lightsaber out the sides. And he does a barrel roll to complete a full circle and take out the remaining ties before the ship escapes into hyperspace at that point. That was so great. I absolutely loved that part. That was like I probably watched that like 4 times over the last few days just to like see that. What did you think so far of that?
Okay, so I'm telling, they look like missiles. Oops, I think I just hit my screen. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I got you.
So I think the scene's amazing, hands down. Like I really do. I think I you called it with the space battle. There was a very small space battle compared to what we could have had,
Yeah, exactly.
but it was yeah, like yep. Oh, there goes the TIE bomber. See you. And we know that's like what, a 5-hull ship. That's what those are, right?
He got a direct hit on the after a whole
Two,
breach. That's
two.
why.
He had two direct hits. It is gone. See you. Like I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe he's TIE bomber out in one shot. But again, what we see on the show is obviously not going to ever translate into X-wing because they give certain things more credibility than they need, right? Um, everything everything dies in one shot. Fair enough. The Death Star dies in one shot. so, um, so I loved it. I disagree with you. I still think they are kind of missiles. The way they look like is they're shooting out the back. That's like there's fire coming from them. Now, maybe it's still the same as a rig cargo per se, but it just really looks like it's firing from the back. But I think it's genius how they set it up where he delays, and it's that split second where if he had 2 seconds, if they had deployed the ties a few seconds earlier, he would be dead. It would be done and over with.
Yeah.
There would not, Luthen would no longer be there. Now, the best part though of that whole scene is that commander on the commander of that ship when he's just like, it's like every fucking Imperial commander is so surprised when something happens, and you're like, oh, "Come on, guy! Did you not hear about these things blowing up? Like, did you not hear about how this happened? And maybe this guy's the first one. Maybe he's the very first Imperial commander to be like, they're getting away. Like you just know you know your life's over, especially if they find out that Axis is working with Cassian, who started this whole disruption, and this whole thing like curtails. Like Palpatine or Vader's gonna walk in there, and that commander's gonna be like, and then
you were not summoned here to grovel.
Like, exactly. Yeah, there's no saving you. You're gone.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that Imperial Commander is a throwback to like the first movies where like everybody just looks surprised that this shit could happen. But like if you think about it, at this point in New Hope, none of those people should be surprised when the rebels take a Star Destroyer down. It shouldn't happen, but it does. And here again, we see it happen. And here these people just sit here like, okay. Same with those TIE fighters. Can you imagine being a TIE fighter pilot? Like I would immediately get into my TIE fighter and defect. Like, I would be like, I know what happens to you fucks. Like, I've seen this happen too many times. I'm not cannon fodder. Do not ruthless me and fly away. I'd be gone. I'd just be gone. Like, boop, see ya. Are you going to chase me to kill me, or are you going to go after them? I don't know. And maybe it's just the piece of me that hates war that much. I don't know. But I would be gone. I'd be whoosh, gone, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we all know that this would have never happened to Thrawn.
Yeah, exactly.
Thrawn would have launched the fighters a long time ago.
Yeah, Thrawn would have launched the TIE fighters out the back and created a screen with 2 bombers like dropping smoke, and then the TIE fighters would have come around the edges, and Luthen would have been like, he would have been the Imperial commander. He would have been like, fuck, I'm fucked.
Yeah, exactly.
But he has an advantage here. So in all seriousness, his advantage is, to some extent, the Imperial commanders are intrigued by what's going on. To some extent, they don't want to just murder him, because they could have just murdered him, right? Like, come on, it's a superstar destroyer. They could literally have just blown him up, They didn't have to do a tractor beam. They could have just blew him to Kingdom Come. But because they're intrigued, because they need to understand, they have to do what they do. And then that it's the same thing like when we see Han Solo get away how many times. It's like, you didn't need to put him in carbonite. You could have put a bullet in his head, preserved him, and taken him. But you didn't. That's not what you did. You froze him so he could get unfrozen to kill you all. Like, come on. Come on, babe. Like, who does that? Especially when the Empire just murders people for no reason. Like, how many times does Palp go, he's gone, and then they're just gone? He's just, boom, see you. Crazy. Yep.
Absolutely. So so that definitely was the highlight of that. I loved it. I expect to see the ambush happen next episode, and probably have Cassian get rescued by Luthien next episode. Yep. I think that's what's gonna happen.
Well, and the one part we haven't covered yet is we know his mom dies, and we see
that's right.
Funeral stuff happen, and we see, I will tell you what, that droid gives me the feels more than C-3PO and R2-D2 put together. Just hands down.
Yeah, that the fact that he can, I guess, simulate depression and convey that feeling, right? Because he wants to still remain there. Man, that was just so well done. Like, it just conveyed so much emotion and being a droid. Like, it was good.
Yep. Can you stay here? Can you stay?
Not for long.
How about just overnight?
Like at your place?
Yeah. But yeah.
Yes.
DJ, yes. So I told that if you go back to the first episode we did, or second episode we did of this, I predicted that droid would become K2SO, or the ship droid would become K2SO. Like, that was my prediction. I genuinely think that's gonna happen. I really do agree. K2SO for Rogue One has so much depth for a droid. Like, it has to be this droid. It has to be this droid. It has to. But I'm telling you, that droid, like, hands down, in my opinion, has been like the underdog character of this whole show.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's going to get the L3 treatment, where like it'll be unable to function in its body and it gets transplanted into K2?
Yeah, that makes sense, or it's a way for Cassian or somebody to make sure that droid lives on in a more functional basis, right? Like, how do I hide this droid? That's my theory, is like they're gonna have, like, the Empire has taken an interest to some extent in that droid, and like they're watching that house. That guy staying overnight, that's gonna cause red flags. That's a red flag right there. Throwing the Tinder God, flag here. But that's a red flag. And I think that's going to be the big thing, is how do they transfer that droid to allow it to live? Because it's the last piece that Cassian has of his family. Literally, the last piece.
Yep, exactly.
So good.
Yep.
So good. We didn't even cover everything in that episode. There's so much in like that 40 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for our Universe Extended episode 17, covering Andor episode 11. We do this every week. We will be back next week after our regularly scheduled 9 p.m. Eastern Planing Phase Syndicate X-Wing Miniatures podcast to discuss the last episode in season 1 of Andor. So I'm going to throw this out here. If you would like to be a part of this, send JJ a message on Discord. If you would like to be part of the discussion, I only have 2 rules. 1, you have to be able to connect your mic and have some sort of quiet. Like I can't have a bunch of like crazy noise in the background. But if you are in a quiet enough space, you don't have to have a professional mic. Just be in a quiet enough space where you could put like a headset on and talk through some sort of a mic, whether it's your Apple headset or your Beats or whatever people that don't use Apple stuff have, and you want to talk about episode 12, we will 100% open it up to anybody that wants to join us. Like, hands down. Like, I don't care who you are. The one requirement I have is that you're in a quiet area. And then the second piece of it is that you let us know before Sunday afternoon at noon. So we have to know before noon on Sunday. But if you are listening to this and you want to join the discussion, you don't even have to have your face like we have. We could just put audio, and I could create little icons for people. I could have a bunch of icons at the bottom of the screen here. Oh, you can't see my mouse, but I could have a bunch of icons at the bottom of the screen. If you want to join and talk about it with us, we will dedicate next Sunday's show to whoever wants to join us after our normal show. So essentially, it'll be 10:30ish to 11 is when we'll start, and we'll go for 1 hour at the most, up till midnight. If you want to join us, message JJ on Discord or post in our general and tag JJ on our Discord, Planning Face Syndicate, and you can be a part of the final episode 18 discussion of episode 12 of Andor.
All right.
So, thank you all for joining us. We will be back next week with another Planning Phase Syndicate episode, and then our final recap on the Universe Extended of Andor, episode 12. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.